Hello, welcome back to the channel. I was very inspired over the weekend by a show that I saw on Netflix, which was a documentary limited series called Pretend It's a City with Martin Scorsese and Fran Lebowitz. Fran Lebowitz is she's an author and a humorist, and these episodes are really fascinating, really great discussion, very interesting scenes of New York City and her opinions on New York in general. If you're a fan of Fran Lebowitz, you know what I'm talking about here. But I really enjoyed it. My wife and I watched it. I watched it to begin with, and then she started watching it with me, and then we went back to the beginning and watched most of it again. So if you have Netflix, I highly recommend the show, and it really inspired me to talk about some of my favorite documentaries maybe that I haven't talked about on the channel. You probably know from the channel that I'm a big fan of documentaries, but I haven't shown some of these, so I thought I would show some. And one of the things that they talk about in the limited series is this documentary called Public Speaking. Now, this is Fran Lebowitz on the front here, and Martin Scorsese also worked with Fran Lebowitz. This was about 10 years ago that this came out. And this is a really great documentary as well, available on DVD. I don't think there's a Blu-ray of this one. This also has a short conversation with Martin Scorsese and a short conversation with Fran Lebowitz. But I could really listen to Fran Lebowitz talk for hours, as well as Martin Scorsese. I mean, you know, in the documentary, at least on the Netflix one, Martin Scorsese spends a lot of time laughing and asking the questions, but he does talk a little bit. It's mostly Fran Lebowitz. And again, I think she's a genius. I think she's very funny. She really has a great take on New York City. She talks about transportation. She talks about walking around the city. And New York City is a fascinating place, just in general, but it's great to hear her talk about that. So highly recommend the Netflix series, as well as this show, Public Speaking, or this movie, Public Speaking. Next up is a film called Bukowski, Born Into This. Now, Charles Bukowski is maybe not for everyone. He's another author. He's kind of a rough guy. He had famously had a pretty bad alcohol problem, but he's an author and a poet, and I really like this documentary. You really see his genius in this one, and again, it's not for everyone. He's kind of a rough individual, but I really have a lot of respect for him. He also worked in the post office, and he has this is probably one of his more famous books called Post Office, about it's basically pretty autobiographical about his experiences in the post office, and the chapters are very short. You can see, I was trying to see ones in here that, I mean, they're about a page or two a piece, and so it's a really easy read, but I really enjoy this. This is one of my favorite novels, I suppose, even though it's very autobiographical. But if you're into Bukowski, this is a great film. It's on DVD. I don't think there's a Blu-ray of this one either, but this one also has some special features. It has Bukowski's final home movie footage from 1992. Bukowski was born in 1920 and he died in 1994. There's a sneak peek at previously unpublished poems. So he was a poet as well as a novelist, and I happen to like his short poems as well. Very, very inspirational in some ways. Extended interviews, Tom Waits and Bono read Bukowski poetry. So a lot of musicians are big fans of Bukowski. Born Into This, a behind-the-scenes featurette and an audio commentary. So this DVD has a lot of extras on it if you're interested in Bukowski. This next one is a documentary that was on Netflix called Call Me Lucky, and it's a profile of the comedian Barry Crimmins, which Barry Crimmins was kind of a comedian's comedian. He was kind of a curmudgeon, and this kind of tells his story. This was directed by Bobcat Goldthwait, and I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but I really thought this was a great profile of Barry Crimmins as a comedian, and as a person. This also has a commentary with Bobcat Goldthwait and Crimmins, and it's really an inspiring story. You really have to watch it to get the full picture here. But I really enjoy his take on life, and he's not around anymore. I think he died a few years ago, but this is also a really good one that I think this recently came on Blu-ray because I hadn't seen it before. Many of the shows on Netflix never make it to Blu-ray or never get a physical media release, but I noticed this one had one. So this next one is a documentary called Shepard and Dark, and it's really a profile of the friendship between Sam Shepard and Johnny Dark, who used to write letters to each other back and forth, and I really enjoy this one. Again, for me, documentaries I watch over and over again, and this is one that I certainly do that with. So this kind of takes you through their history together as friends and talks about a project that they were working on to publish the letters that they wrote to each other over the years. And Sam Shepard, of course, was a playwright. I don't think he's not with us anymore. But Shepard and Dark tells the story of the unlikely decades-spanning friendship between Academy Award-nominated actor and Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Sam Shepard, who wrote The Right Stuff, and Buried Child was one of his plays, and eccentric reclusive deli clerk Johnny Dark. So Johnny Dark worked in a deli and had kind of a simple life, but these two men had this friendship together, and it's really interesting to hear how they talk with each other, hear their experiences of writing letters back and forth to each other. This is a favorite of mine. Again, this is a DVD release. This has additional interviews with Sam Shepard, 7 Things I Learned From You gallery, deleted scenes, and a theatrical trailer. So highly recommend this one. I think this was also on streaming for a while. It might still be on streaming on Amazon Prime. One of my favorite actors, Harry Dean Stanton. This is a documentary called Partly Fiction. And if you know Harry Dean Stanton, again, here's a screenshot from one of his movies, Paris, Texas. But he's been in so many movies before. You can see him up here in a conversation with David Lynch. But this is just a great profile of Harry Dean Stanton as an actor, and he's one of my favorites of all time. So I really enjoy this particular documentary. Again, I'm a big fan of not only just documentaries about subject matters, but profiles on actors, directors, and this is a great one. So speaking of actors and directors, this is a profile of director Chantal Akerman called I Don't Belong Anywhere. If you don't know Chantal Akerman's work, a lot of her films are on the Criterion channel, which I happen to watch quite frequently. But she's done quite a few films. Again, these films may not be for everyone. Chantal Akerman, famously known for maybe having slower paced, more meditative, contemplative movies. And again, these are not for everyone, but this is a great profile of her, and I really enjoy this one. It's kind of it's a shorter movie, 67 minutes, but it was made in 2015. But really, really amazing. I really love her work. Films like News from Home, as an example. Jeanne Dielman is another one of her movies that I really enjoy. But she has so many. But again, they can be very slow-paced, potentially. Not everyone likes them, which is completely fine. But I really love her work, and this is a great profile of her. And finally, this is a documentary called Wide Awake, portrait of an artist as insomniac. Now, if you're like me, especially during the last year, during 2020, I've had a lot of trouble sleeping. So this is a particularly good documentary talking about insomnia and what this particular filmmaker by the name of Alan Berliner has to go through. He kind of does a study of it here. This one was shown on HBO, and so this is, as you can see, an HBO documentary film. HBO has great documentary films, by the way, too. So, but he's done a lot of other films. This, I feel like, is one of his better movies. I really enjoy this one, and it's really a study of his own insomnia and how he copes with it, how he gets through it. Highly recommend this one. It's on I noticed it was on DVD. Again, a lot of these movies from HBO never get released on DVD or Blu-ray, but I happened to see this one and I picked it up. So that is just a short stack of some of the documentary films that I enjoy. And again, I was really inspired by the Fran Lebowitz limited series documentary on Netflix called Pretend It's a City. Wow, what an amazing show that is if you get a chance to see it. It's probably one of my most favorite shows. We're only early into 2021, but it's one of my favorite shows for sure. Very rewatchable as well, because Fran Lebowitz talks very fast, and so sometimes you miss a few things. But if you have a favorite documentary, as you know from the channel, I'm such a huge fan of documentaries. Let me know in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going there. I want to say thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. If you like this video, click on like. That really helps too. I sincerely hope that everyone is safe and well, and I'll talk to you soon.